I'm planning on going to Techno Tuesday on election night, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually
Like, don't worry
don't think
about
I
it.
can I don't think I can do it without it. I don't think this election is happening any other way for me. We're here, back for episode 11 of Yeah, for Real, for the long-awaited part two. We promised it would come. I'm
For the
host
election?
Isaac. I'm a host Isaac, joined by my good friend.
Oh, Charlie.
Sweet. Yeah, and Charlie, we already did an episode together talking about the election
Yeah,
once, but that was like a
yeah.
month ago.
What has
And
changed?
honestly, a lot has changed. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if we're necessarily surprised that it's
I
changed.
mean, I think there was some predictable
Yeah,
tightening of the race. You
yeah,
know, we're
definitely.
this is we've always said this is going to be a 50-50 race. And I think
It's
over the
true.
last month, it's only become more of a 50-50 race. So not necessarily a surprise,
No.
but I mean, I was a little surprised to see Trump kind of with some October momentum. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was a little surprised about the October momentum.
especially because he
As,
wasn't staying on message at all.
no,
Like if
I
he
was
was running a
surprised
good
by yeah.
campaign, I'd be like, okay, sure, fundamentals favor him.
Yeah, but the no, the campaign is probably more off the rails than it's ever been.
That I've
Um,
I've ever seen it.
like it's actually the most insane. Like every single day, there's a new thing that would have like killed anyone's campaign. Actually, literally anyone other than Trump. Like literally
Yeah,
anyone
yeah,
other than him.
yeah.
Um,
It's unbelievable.
yeah. So I guess to like let's we should definitely start with just like general state of the race. So just brief overview. Last time me and Charlie spoke, it was a 50-50, but we were giving the edge to Kamala a little bit. She had the
Yeah,
momentum. She had all the she was sort of still in the honeymoon maybe. And since
we
then,
didn't
it's
like
been
the way she was running her campaign, though,
no, we didn't.
or at
And
least I didn't.
yeah, no, you didn't, and I agreed with you, and I think you have been proven correct in that the way that she has changed her campaign, like it's just it's had a negative relationship. But also, like, I think a lot of people predicted that like there were going to be a lot of people who were like, ah, am I gonna vote for Trump or like, what am I gonna? And like eventually they go back
Yeah,
home to the Republican Party, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But what
yeah.
do you think? What are your general takes?
Okay, so in the last month, we've had Kamala largely stick to her message of abortion rights, protecting democracy, and she's I'd say that she's started talking about the economy a little bit more
Yeah,
in the last like week or so, and I've been really pleased to see that. Um, because I really, although I think that the abortion and protecting democracy message is a great one, I don't think that it's necessarily a political winner in an election where people want change and where there's vast economic discontent.
yeah,
Now, that being said, Trump has ran what is probably the craziest campaign I've ever seen in my entire life in the last month. I mean,
yeah.
he just cannot stay on message. Like he could have easily capitalized on, Kamala's lull in momentum in October by just talking about like the economy, immigration, cost of living, all that stuff, sticking to the issues, sticking to the policies, like as far as he, even really has them. Um, and instead, he's talking about like Arnold Palmer's like like walking out of the shower. He's talking about well, speaking of dick jokes, can I say that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dude, the microphone.
The microphone thing, that was so I mean, come on. You can't make that shit up. Um but instead like yeah, he's like making these like weird diatribes about Arnold Palmer in the showers. He's having this absolutely unhinged MSG rally. He's doing like that weird garbage stunt where he can't open the door to the garbage truck and
Oh
it's,
yeah.
like he cannot stop talking about voter fraud in the 2020 election in January 6th. Um, he can't stop talking about like other Americans dying, whether it
Yeah.
be like the Liz Cheney comment or what was the one today? Uh, oh, he had one, I was just reading about this. He had one today where he was like joking about the bulletproof glass in front of him at his rally. And he was like, if anyone were to get to me, they would have to like shoot through the press. And he was like, I wouldn't really mind that.
Whoa.
He can't, he just can't stop talking about violence. So I think because of that, the race remains a 50-50, even though
Yeah.
Kamala's momentum has lulled. And, I think everything that Trump has done in the past month should be completely disqualifying. But the fundamentals of the race just favor him so much that, he's able to keep it neck and neck.
Yeah, and the fundamentals, you mean, like the economy, like immigration, just sort of like the
Yes.
key things that sort of elections are always decided by, right?
The key, really, the economy. I mean, the economy is kind of always the most important issue. Although
Yeah.
we've seen some recent data in the past couple of days that shows that abortion is becoming a more salient issue in the last week of the campaign, which is
Yeah.
obviously a good thing for Kamala. Um, but I kind of think of Trump as, despite the fact that he's already been president, as occupying the change candidate kind of.
Yeah. Well, Kamala is the sitting vice president. So,
She's the sitting vice president, and she hasn't worked very hard to distance herself from Biden and from his administration. And Trump is kind of somehow still running as an outsider. And the fact of the matter is that, and I think we maybe talked about this a little bit in the last episode, this is a change election. 70% of the country is extremely, extremely unsatisfied with the direction of the country, with their current economic situation. Saw some polling in the New York Times maybe a week ago that shows a little over 60% of the country thinks the economy needs vast and complete structural change. So it's like 2008 in that way. It's a
yeah.
big change election. And usually the change candidates win the change elections. And Kamala has a disadvantage on the economy as a big problem for her, and she's not running as a change candidate. And I think, that's a pretty, you can go back and look at other American elections, and it's pretty telling whether, the change status quo cycle,
Yeah.
it can often tell you who's gonna win the election.
I agree. I also think what's weird is that, like, if you just take for what she says at face value, she is running as a change candidate. Like, she says
Yeah.
all the time, like, Trump is looking backwards and I'm looking forwards. And like that's true. Like Trump's policies
Mhm.
literally like he has multiple policies that he wants to put in place that are like literally haven't been like the tariff stuff, which is like literally hasn't been used
Yeah.
since like the 1700s. Like like she's
Yeah.
right. But on the like particular like issues that actually stick with like economy and like healthcare and immigration, she's
I mean, she's just
very
not even talking about healthcare.
no, barely. I mean, I think other this was pointed out to me in a TikTok comment. She is talking about reproductive health care. But like
That's true.
other than that, like she's really not talking about healthcare. Like
Mhm.
and this is something I'm just gonna say this again, but I remember you said this on the last episode, but like the Biden administration has done a lot for like prescription medication prices
Oh yeah.
and like the fact that like to be honest, like she's letting Trump and Vance get away with saying that they did the $35 insulin thing is crazy. Um,
Unbelievable.
it's like I just like don't see them fighting back against this. Like it's
Yeah.
very strange. One thing I wanted to the Liz Cheney comment was insane. Let's talk about the MSG rally. I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
obviously, the most unhinged campaign rally held in Madison Square Garden since 1939. And
Yeah.
and do you think it matters?
Um, well, I think that if Trump's other insane comments haven't disqualified him yet, then these aren't going to disqualify him, you know, either.
Yeah,
But where I do think it matters is, in the key state of Pennsylvania. This is
yeah,
not a real election. This is an election for who's going to win Pennsylvania. And there's something like what, 500,000 Puerto Ricans in
yeah.
Pennsylvania. Um, and considering how close the margin is going to be in that state, we got some polling today from the New York Times in Siena College that has Trump and Kamala tied at 47
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania, maybe 48. I think that it could make a difference there because the comedian, whatever his name, I can't even remember, the island of garbage comment was really, really, really insane and could not have been. I mean, if you were to say something like that with 2 months left in the campaign,
Yeah.
then obviously really bad, but you have time to recover, especially if the fundamentals of the campaign and the economy as a major issue favors you. But the fact that it was said with days left before November 5th is a really
Yeah.
big deal because that is what is going to be on, one of the things that's going to be on voters' minds, especially late deciders when they're, deciding who to vote for. And it also mobilized like, Bad Bunny and Jennifer Lopez and just kind of like, all uh, really kind of mobilized voters in Puerto Rican voters. So that could make a difference in Pennsylvania. So in that sense, yeah, could make a difference. But it's not gonna like, I mean, it's if the Access Hollywood tape didn't get him in 2016, like this isn't gonna like, be some like grand disqualifying event.
Yeah, I agree. I think it matters in that, this is a coin flip. And so like
Yeah.
literally like, I don't know, like people look at the Biden 2020 race, and it's like on paper it looks like Biden won by a decent amount, right? Because there was like
Yeah.
306 to, well, 100 something.
Mhm.
But like four different states were between like 20,000 to 60,000 votes. Like Pennsylvania,
Yeah, I mean,
Biden won
Georgia
Pennsylvania
being at
by,
11,000.
exactly. Biden won Pennsylvania by, I want to say 50,000 votes, and Trump won it by 70,000 in 2016. And there are
Mhm.
500,000 Puerto Ricans, like in Pennsylvania. Like that is near 10 times that distance, you know?
Yeah.
And so I
And not all of them are
absolutely,
gonna vote, and
no,
not all of them are gonna vote for Harris.
no. But this is the
And
kind
not,
of thing that could
but
make people
exactly.
vote.
And it can motivate pro-Harris supporters to show up to the polls. It can maybe swing a few votes. It can maybe depress turnout among potentially pro-Trump voters. Um, and you add all of those things together, maybe you get a couple thousand votes out of it. And those type of margins are going to be really, really important in this election.
Yeah. I mean, I think is it just Pennsylvania? Like, is it basic? I think it is like 70% for each candidate chance of winning if they win Pennsylvania, something like that, right?
It's pretty much it's pretty much an election for Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I
What
mean,
I ha-
thanks Electoral College.
Actually, what I have read though is that it's a more of a must win for Trump than it is Harris.
Yes.
And I think
He
that's
he
accurate.
needs it for his path to victory. She has other paths to victory, but realistically probably needs Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Both of
And
them
then
probably need Pennsylvania.
yeah. And so why, like, have you seen like the different campaign strategies from Kamala Harris, like in Pennsylvania and then in other states? Like, because it's so important. Like, I know we talked about fracking last time, how like she
Mhm.
has to like sort of talk a lot about fracking there. I saw one thing today that she is running pro-Israel ads in Pennsilvania and pro-Palestine ads
Mm.
in Michigan, which is super interesting. Like, what do you think about that? I mean, we don't have to talk about the issue in and of itself, but what do you think about like running? She's saying two different things in the ads. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not very great for her appearance as a flip-flopper,
Yeah,
or for, her kind of appearance as someone who, um, doesn't really have any firm ideological positions. She's kind of malleable, and I actually do think that that's true. Um, I think that she's going to be a pretty just general center-left candidate, who will be susceptible to pressure from either the center of the Democratic Party or the left of the Democratic Party.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, she's just trying to do some shrewd politics. Maybe it is shrewd politics. Maybe that ends up working. Um, but it just kind of shows how at this point, the campaigns have really become a dogfight. Like, kind of traditional things of like ideological consistency have really been kind of thrown out the window.
Yeah, I think both campaigns are really just throwing whatever they have at the wall right now. They're
I
just
mean, that's been Trump's like policy platform the entire time is find a key constituency, whether it be service workers in Nevada
yeah.
or, like seniors, and just come up with some way to cut their taxes.
Yeah.
And that's that's the pretty much entirety of his economic policy besides putting humongous tariffs on everything. So, I mean, it's really kind of a very clientelist um, phase of the election where, the campaigns are identifying key constituencies that they need to win, and they're just trying to kind of come up with ways, whether it be in messaging or whether it be in policy, to appeal to those groups. And just, yeah, seeing what sticks, trying anything. I think that's a perfect example. I mean, running dual ads, one like some pro Israel in Pennsylvania, some pro um, Palestine in Michigan.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. I mean, and just to just say it for point's sake, like you're talking about key constituencies, like that's happening because there's a high Jewish population in Pennsylvania and there's a
Mm,
high Arab American population in Michigan, which I don't think she's freaked out enough about in Michigan, for the record. Like
yeah, I worry about
yeah.
Michigan.
I
Absolutely.
seriously worry about Michigan
Yeah,
specifically for that reason. The uncommitted movement is very strong there.
yeah,
Um, and I think that that could be a surprise. That could definitely be a surprise.
yeah.
Speaking of surprises, every election there is an October surprise. It is no longer
Mm.
October. Um, did it just not happen this year, or do you think it did happen, and what do you think it was?
I think the October surprise was the week-long stretch, starting with John Kelly calling Trump a fascist
Hmm.
and culminating in the MSG rally.
Yeah,
I think that was the October surprise. Um, which is not as like juicy of an October surprise as like, say, the FBI reopening its investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails.
yeah,
Like, it's kind of not going to move the needle in the same way that that did. But the John Kelly comment was incredibly important because it kind of made it politically acceptable to say the truth about Trump, which is that he's a
yeah,
fascist. And the MSG rally was just like very well-timed evidence of that
yeah,
fact. You had insanely nativist and super racist rhetoric coming from a lot of speakers and also coming from Trump. And then you also had right around the MSG rally, a huge amount of violent rhetoric coming from Trump. I mean, the rise in rhetoric just actually calling for violence against his political enemies, uh, and his kind of refusal to back away from the enemy from within line, and the fact that he's actually naming people who he thinks are the enemy from within, like Adam Schiff. That is like straight up out of a authoritarian playbook. Um, and you need to be careful with the term fascist. I mean, it meant one thing in the 30s, a very kind of particular ideology.
hmm
But one of the central aspects of fascism is its willingness to use violence for political ends. And Trump's embrace of violent rhetoric, while, at the same time as his former chief of staff, calling him a fascist and Harris calling him a fascist, I think that's pretty supportive of Harris's closing argument.
yeah.
Um, and it's going to be, that could potentially move the needle a little bit with some independent voters. I still think the economy is the proper message to run on. Um, but, you know, I think that could be a difference. And I think that was the October surprise.
I agree. Um, I mean, so there's I guess actually no, now it's November, so I was gonna say something else was the October surprise, but it's not. But speaking of a early November surprise, perhaps, Uh,
Mhm.
let's talk about it. Ann Seltzer. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to explain the significance behind like Ann Seltzer's Iowa poll in particular and 2016 and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so, this woman, Ann Selzer, she she runs a polling company and has since like 1996 or something. And since 2008, she's just had a remarkable track record in Iowa. She predicted Obama's victory in the 2008 Democratic primary. She predicted Trump's dominance when people thought he was like maybe on the fence a little bit, or on the ropes a little bit in this election's primary. She's been super accurate with Senate elections. Like she's so accurate with polling in the state of Iowa that for many people, she's not a gold standard of polling, but like the gold standard of polling. You pay attention to Ann Selzer's polls, and she released a poll last night that had Kamala up 3, with some pretty shocking crosstabs. Up 20 with white women, up like 27 or 28 with independent women, um, doing extraordinarily well among seniors.
Yeah, the seniors
And
thing was I think what really shocked a lot of people on the right.
yeah. And the fact of the matter is that it is almost certainly an outlier poll. And outlier polls happen even from incredibly good polling outfits. But the fact that it's from Seltzer, grants it a little bit of a sense of legitimacy
Yeah.
that maybe, another outlier poll wouldn't have. But we've seen polls like this. The Washington Post had a poll in 2020 that had Biden up 17 in Wisconsin, right before the election.
Yeah.
When you do random sampling, sometimes this is just kind of how your sample of voters comes back. But I think it's most likely that this is just a kind of basic outlier poll. Um, we got, some polling today. I was actually looking at this
Yeah.
or maybe it was yesterday, from Emerson College, another good pollster, but not Selzer, that had Trump up 9 in Iowa, which is kind of more on brand with, what we've seen. Um, but I think there is a case to be made for why this poll should be taken seriously. Um, and I think that case rests on Nebraska's second district
Okay.
and the recent Kansas poll that had Kamala down only 5 in Kansas. Um, you've these Nebraska second district, Kansas and Iowa are incredibly similar demographically. They have relatively high shares of college educated voters. Um, they have, they're very obviously incredibly white states, and Kamala has been doing surprisingly well with white voters and has been making a push for kind of white suburban women in the last couple weeks. Um, so, it's interesting that we've had many, many weeks of polling coming out of Nebraska's second district that has Harris up like 12 or 14, pretty wide margins relative to Biden's. I think it was what, 6 point margin of victory in 2020. I can't remember exactly. I think it was something about that. I'll fact check myself. Um, and then, to be consistently receiving polling like that, while also seeing a poll that has her down only 5 in Kansas, and now getting the Seltzer poll, you could make the argument that that is saying something about a specific demographic of voters swinging really heavily towards Kamala.
Right.
Um, and then now you could also make the argument that the campaign has invested resources in Nebraska's second, and that the Kansas poll is an outlier, which it is,
Yeah.
and that the Seltzer poll is an outlier, which it is. So I'm not sure how much, we should be kind of taking this seriously or how much we should be reading into it, but it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, so just to say it, if, in case we didn't say it, the Iowa poll has Kamala up 47 to 44.
I've heard.
Um, no, it's of course. The reason I think in particular why people put a lot on Seltzer is because she was like the first person to sound the alarm on Trump doing well in 2016, right?
Yes.
Because she as you alluded to, showed the poll of Trump just like dominating in Iowa, and people were like
Yeah.
really shocked by that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's a huge obviously there's a huge demographic shift of women to Kamala, and I think what you were talking about, like these polls in Kansas of white women, suburban women, these polls in Nebraska second district in Iowa. If your assumption is true that it is actual demographic swings, then I think it's also I think you can also then assume that Kamala might be betting correctly on talking as much about abortion as she is.
Yes.
Um, and I think it makes sense. I mean, like, let's talk about the 2022 midterms,
Mhm.
like supposed to be a red wave. I mean, it's like I think we're out of the pandemic, maybe. Like it's still kind of weird. Like, Biden's starting to become really unfavorable. I think Afghanistan, like, just I think we pulled out of did we pull out of Afghanistan like 2 months before? I think, like
No,
in the
it was 2021.
okay.
But that
Um,
had like started his kind of like horrible fall in approval rating.
Yeah. And everyone was looking at a red wave. And in fact there was no red wave, and Democrats seriously overperformed everywhere except for like New
Mhm.
York and California. Um and the post election polls showed it was because of abortion. Like abortion is just such
Mhm.
a winning issue for Democrats.
Yeah.
Partly because Trump can't stay on message, right? Like
Yeah.
in the beginning of the campaign cycle, I think he was very correctly not talking about the national abortion ban. Whenever anyone asked him, he was like, actually, no, I wouldn't sign a national abortion ban. And then, a week ago, he talked about how he's going to put RFK in charge of women's reproductive health care, and how
Yeah.
he's going to quote, make decisions for the women whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Like
That speaks
abortion.
volumes.
No, it speaks volumes. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, I think there is no bigger losing issue for Trump than abortion. Like
100%.
which is interesting because you pointed out the fascism piece. Like Kamala does now have standing to call him a fascist. I just don't think it matters. Like I don't think people care. Like I think that people I don't think anyone who is like willing to buy into the fact that Trump is a fascist didn't like already know that, or
Yeah.
then even if they do, like maybe they just don't care. Like I think you're right.
Yeah.
Like they always say this at 538, like it's the economy, stupid. Like it's the
Yeah.
economy. Like people don't really care about the like political theory behind what kind of candidate you are.
Yeah. People are either voting for Trump because they like all the things that, kind of make him theoretically, and, the eyes of a lot of Democratic voters, a fascist,
Yeah.
or they're reluctantly voting for him because they think he'll be better for the economy, even if they don't like him.
Yeah. Well, so perfect transition. Speaking of people who might like the fascism, a big, I think, surprise to a lot of young Democrats this election has been the shift of Gen Z men to Trump. Just like,
Yeah.
I mean, Gen Z women, I think it's something like plus, God, like plus 30 or something. Like, I mean, like Kamala is just doing so well with Gen Z women. But men under 30 are significantly more likely to support Trump. I believe aged 18 to 29, so that's around Gen Z. It's about plus 12 for Trump, which is compared to the plus 19 for Kamala for women. What's going on? That's weird. I mean, that's weird, I think, looking at like where those numbers were in 2020, even when like Trump across the board is just broadly unpopular with Gen Z.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Trump has obviously made it a key part of his strategy to pick up like, disaffected young men, and add them to his constituency. Um, he's got he seems to have Barron Trump whispering in his ear, telling him like, all the influencers or, like Twitch streamers that, young men pay attention to. Um, and Trump has gone on so many of them,
Yeah.
like a remarkable amount. Joe Rogan, Aiden Ross, Logan Paul. Um, I mean, there's a couple more too, but I don't. Those are
I
the
mean,
three
those
that
are the big three.
those are the big three. Um, So, I think that he's been making a real push for those voters, and there hasn't really been any counter messaging from the Harris campaign, um, or, any kind of sustained push for young men. They don't see that as a key demographic. So I think it's been working for Trump. So that would be one thing.
Yeah.
And then also, this entire episode, I've been trying to find my source because I read this morning and I cannot find it for the life of me. But I was just reading this morning about how on messaging polling towards Gen Z men, the Democrats' weakest issue or weakest message was about protecting democracy. Their
Mm,
strongest message was about the economy. Their weakest message was about protecting democracy. And as the campaign has really kind of leaned away from the Obama hope and change themes, the kind of forward thinking Harris campaign versus backward thinking Trump campaign messaging that they were doing, you know, earlier in August and
yeah.
at the beginning of the campaign, they've shifted to a more pro-democracy, protecting democracy message. And messaging polling just says that that's not a popular message among young
Yeah.
men. Young men just kind of aren't really persuaded by that argument. And I don't, I mean, as a young man, I can't possibly imagine like what would make Trump a kind of an attractive figure. It just feels so obvious to me that like, I would never, ever, ever want to support this dude.
Yeah.
But clearly something is working. And the protecting democracy message, unfortunately, is not working. And I think it just kind of explains a shift in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, the reason why she's not really counter messaging that much on it is at the end of the day, there's no more of a uh, less frequent voter than young men. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
young men vote the least. And I think this is like, if I had to say, like, what is going to be the absolute largest, like, what will shape this election is just like, can Trump get disaffected and non-voters to vote,
Yes.
right? Because, I haven't, seen the exact crosstabs on this because most polls don't release both options of this. But
Mhm.
like the difference between like likely voters and all registered voters is very different. I
Yeah.
think all registered
Yeah.
voters, Trump is a lot more strong. Um, and I think it just is not yet clear if that's a strategy that's going to work. I mean, every state that counts this is counting record early turnout. I mean,
Yes.
like I'm seeing photos of lines, like a day long line.
Yes.
Um, and while I think that is something that often worries Republicans and makes Democrats feel better, I'm not convinced. Like I think like Trump has really worked on convincing his supporters to do early voting after he
Mhm.
trashed it in 2020, and that maybe honestly lost him the election. Um, and I also just think that like at the end of the day, like if non-voters vote, Trump has a better chance.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's true.
yeah,
It's really, really hard to get young men to show up at the polls. And Trump has definitely gained support amongst them. But whether or not that actually translates into any sort of electoral advantage remains to be seen because they might not show up. I mean, it's definitely a big risk for the campaign.
yeah,
Um, also speaking of early voting, yeah, the Democrats maintain an advantage when it comes to early voters in most states. The early voting data, and we'll talk about this when we do our state by state predictions.
hmm
The exit polling we have from early voters in Nevada and Arizona looks really bad for Democrats and really good for Trump. Um,
do you have some like wait, I haven't heard about that.
yeah, so the Nevada part uh is in here. I'll link you. It's in a New York Times article today analyzing their own polling.
hmm
Um, where Nevada historically, early voting exit polls are actually a pretty good predictor of the final election outcome. And right now, Trump is leading by two among voters who have already voted in Nevada.
Hmm.
Arizona is just kind of a wash. Um, and Trump, I think, is leading by, um, oh, hold on, I was looking at this. E. Oh, no, here it is. So Republicans have a 2-point edge by party registration among early voters in the Times Siena poll in Nevada. But early voters overall, nonetheless, say they back Miss Harris by 5 points. And she has a wide lead among unaffiliated voters who cast early ballots. But of course, Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents are more likely to vote early than Republican voters, even though Trump has been, kind of simultaneously demonizing early voting and encouraging his supporters to vote early.
Yeah.
Um, the
Speaking of, oh, sorry, yeah.
No, so no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, speaking of bad polling, is Arizona done? Like, is Arizona?
Arizona's done. Yeah, I think so.
What happened in Arizona?
So immigration just continues to become a more and more and more salient issue. Arizona is one of these states, or maybe even the one state, where it is the most important issue. It has now overtaken, uh, it already had overtaken abortion, but it has
Yeah.
now overtaken the economy as the state's most important issue. And Trump just has a serious advantage on the issue of immigration. And that's consistent across all the swing states. That's consistent across the country. And it's very true in Arizona. And it's that's kind of the be all end all of, uh, you know, of that. Polling just kind of continues to show Arizona slipping away from the Harris campaign. And, the salience of immigration, I think, is just gonna, push push the state into the Trump column,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I agree. I mean, we'll cover that, I guess, a little bit more in our race to
Yeah,
531
yeah. We make some
for the
predictions.
G70.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I guess I want to give you an opportunity to bring up anything if you want to talk about before we do our end game. But the last thing that I think I wanted to talk about
Hmm.
was the Texas Senate race.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
I brought this up last time. Texas and Florida are not in play for Kamala. They're not. Kamala's not
No,
going to win either of those.
they're not, and they're not going to be.
No. Um, but I think that there is sustained hope of Colin Allred beating Ted Cruz in Texas. I mean, are you keeping up with this at all? Do you have any thoughts on the mat on this?
I mean, of course, definitely keeping up with it. I mean, I had to vote in this election as, a Texan. Um, Obviously, did not support Ted Cruz. Um, but I am not super hopeful about Colin Allred's chances. For all the talk of Texas becoming a purple state or even a blue state, I just don't see it happening. Um, Part of that is, just like kind of, demographic changes, the fact that, Hispanic voters in Texas, because everyone was like, demographic changes and are going to push Texas into the blue column because there's going to be more and more Hispanic voters. But Hispanic voters in Texas just are becoming more Republican,
Yeah.
with each election cycle. So that argument is just like it no longer holds, demographics are not going to make this state purple or make this state blue. And, in addition to that, and this is more of like a kind of vibes thing,
Okay.
but growing up in Texas, conservative values are just like in the air.
Yeah.
Like even the Democrats in Texas, kind of at the end of the day, hold some, conservative values. Uh, Texas is a very unique state in the sense that people really think of themselves as Texans. There is a lot of, it is its own entire identity. And that identity comes with certain values of kind of individualism, entrepreneurship, um, a kind of focus on state level issues, not over federal issues, but just a preoccupation with
Yeah.
Texas as a state. Um, I said individualism.
Yeah.
Yeah, like personal responsibility, kind of, very like family focused, just certain values that tend to be associated with republicanism traditionally. Um, I think that Trump is changing that a little bit because he doesn't really represent those values all that well. But in a post-Trump era, I wouldn't be surprised to see Texas swing back to the right a little bit. And the fact of the matter is that even among Democrats, a lot of people kind of think the same way. Texas
Yeah.
is a it's a conservative state.
Well, I'll say that
And I
Colin
think
Allred
just
is a conservative Democrat.
he's a conservative
And so
Democrat.
if anyone had a chance to beat Ted Cruz, I think it's more of a him than a like Beto O'Rourke. By the way, I don't think Beto is that far left leaning, but I think he comes off as more like California Democrat, whereas, Colin Allred
He
is fine
didn't
as
in
a
2018.
veteran.
He did in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I agree. I think Colin Allred has ran a really good campaign. I think he did great in the debate. He is a classic Texas Democrat in the sense that he has some he has like Texas values informing his politics in a different way, in a way that pushes him into the Democratic column rather than the Republican column. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the values are pretty similar. I just think that Ted Cruz he is hated. People hate Ted Cruz. But I think that him having an R next to his name is gonna, allow him to win by three,
Yeah.
is what I think is gonna happen.
Well,
It'll
that's
be a
exactly
small
what polls
margin of
show.
victory, but I think he's gonna win by three. And that's what
Um,
happened with Beto in 2018 too. I think that's just kind of, that's my prediction for the race. But I hope Colin Allred can pull it off. I really do.
yeah, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. I agree with you. All right. I mean, the last thing I have to say is LeBron endorsed Kamala. I mean, that's
Oh
probably
yeah.
actually the October surprise, actually. Um,
Yeah, hold on. Why didn't we mention that?
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many like, okay, the king has spoken, I'm voting for Kamala now. Like.
Oh yeah, TikToks I've seen.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean,
100%.
I mean, that's huge. I think that, hey, that's young men right there. Like
No,
that's
no, no, seriously, seriously.
I think that could do something. Is there anything you want to talk about before we get into our little ending game here?
Honestly, a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about going into this, we already covered.
Okay,
I want to do some like serious state by state swing state analysis though.
perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to move into our final section, which is our little changeable interactive 2024 presidential election map here.
Oh, let me pull that
Uh,
up.
we've got here. I can send you the link. But you can choose, it comes blank with whichever swing states. Um, so right now, my map has uh, has two extra states. Actually, no, sorry, three extra states currently in the toss up, just because I thought it would be funny. And so
This
I guess I want to ask you, Charlie, what way do you think Texas and Florida are going to go?
red.
Yeah,
I actually think that Trump is going to win Florida by a relatively wide margin.
yeah.
I think it might even be double digits. Um,
So you think more
he
than
only
Trump
won
in?
Florida by three in 2020.
Yeah,
Um, I think that since then, a lot of Republicans have moved into the state, which is
yeah,
going to kind of shift, um, the electorate towards Trump. And also, the Florida Democratic Party is probably the worst state party in the entire country, just
really.
like organizationally and logistically,
Yeah,
totally incapable. And it's when you have a state party like that, it's pretty hard to counter message. Um, polls from Florida have been a little all over the place. Some of them show Trump with a double-digit lead. Some of them show a 4.5 point race. I think that he's going to win Florida pretty comfortably.
I agree.
As for Texas, um, he's just going to win Texas. He's going to win it by a similar margin as in 2020. I mean, another thing, since 2020, a lot of Republicans have moved into the state. you now have a lot of out-of-state Republicans in Texas, which is something that really upsets me.
Yeah.
Um, because among native Texans, Democrats are becoming more popular. But now we have, all these like crazy California Republicans moving into our state. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
538
just,
has Trump as a +8 on Texas right now.
yeah, I mean that feels accurate to me.
Yeah.
I think it might be a
Um,
little bit closer, but it's going to be something like that.
okay. And then last non popular swing state, Iowa, Charlie. We have to talk about it. I mean, the is Ann Seltzer powerful enough to shift Iowa to blue?
Look,
Are you going to argue against her?
if somehow she calls a Harris Iowa victory, I will just truly I'll let her handle
Yeah.
I won't form my own opinions on the state of Iowa
Okay.
until I
Ever
see
again.
her data for the rest of time.
Okay, but
Um,
you're putting it in the Trump column.
I'm putting it in the Trump column. I think that we might see a bit of a Harris overperformance in some of those Great Plains states, Nebraska, that have relatively high rates of college education. Kansas is the main one I'm thinking. But Kansas, Iowa, um, maybe even Nebraska, but I'm still gonna say that they're gonna go for Trump. I mean, he won by what was it, 8 or 9 in 2020. The state is trending Republican. Um, and the fact of the matter is that this is an outlier poll. And
Yeah,
even good pollsters, even the best pollsters, are going to have outlier polls if you do enough polls.
true.
So I just don't, it's really hard for me to believe that the margins that the Seltzer poll says Kamala is going to win white women by and women over 65 and independent women, it's really hard for me to imagine that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
You might
Um,
overperform that.
I could see it being like a low single digit.
Yeah, like, Trump +4, like that would be super
Yeah,
interesting.
he took it by +9 in 2020.
Yeah.
I just
Mm.
fact checked that, so I could see like a +4, +5. All right. With those sort of silly states out of the way, it is a tight race. Democrats 226 electoral college points, Republicans 219. There are 7 key swing states left: Nevada, Arizona, in the blue wall, Wisconsin and Michigan. And then we have Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Where would you like to take this swing state tour to first?
Can we start on the western stretch of the Sun Belt?
I would agree with that.
Mhm.
All right, so we're talking about Nevada.
All right, well, um, we already talked a little bit
Nevada
about
is
Nevada.
the most western swing state, just for the record.
We already touched on this a little bit. Early voting data looks pretty bad for Harris in Nevada. Um, she, oh yeah, like among party registrants, she's down 2 among early voters, which is not great. She should be winning among um, early voters in every swing state if she wants to have a chance of, winning
Yeah,
any of the states. Um, and the remaining voters, according to the New York Times polling that came out today, um, back Trump. Um, so, Nevada has been swinging to the right a little bit in recent presidential elections. It's consistently been a super close swing state because Democrats and their union supporters in Nevada have an unbelievably strong ground game and turnout game, and that remains the case. Um, I think that, the democratic infrastructure in Nevada is some of the strongest out of anywhere in the country. It's definitely going to keep that state close. But the data right now doesn't look great. The polls have kind of shown Nevada slipping away a little bit. The New York Times one from today was the exception, but they've shown Nevada kind of moving towards Trump in recent weeks. And immigration and the economy are super
yeah,
salient issues in Nevada, and those are issues that favor Trump. So
yeah.
I think that. I'm not super hopeful. I think Nevada goes for Trump. What do you think?
I think I think that's the safe call. Like
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
if the entire election were hinged on Nevada, you'd rather be Trump than Kamala right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
At the end of the day, though, it is only 6 electoral college points. But that nearly ties us up, 226 to 225. Just to point it out, 538 has Trump winning 52 times out of 100 in Nevada. Um, Not that I think we should agree with everything 538 says, but I think they're pretty good. So let's go a little southeast here
Mhm.
to Arizona. We touched on this a little bit before, but I guess I'll start off by saying
Mhm.
the polls are not looking good. I mean,
Yeah.
it is just consistently moving more and more to Trump. 538 has Trump winning 69 times out of 31. That is by far the biggest margin in any of the swing states. Um, Atlas Intel +7 Trump, New York Times, Siena College +4. Uh, I, I don't know. I think it's gone.
It's gone. I think that, yeah, I just think Arizona's gone. Immigration is too strong of an issue, and the state has lurched too far to the right on that issue specifically, since Trump's election in 2016. Um, I just don't, and also, politics, the polls don't tell you everything. The polls are it's useful data, but a lot of politics is a human exercise.
Yeah.
And the vibes out of Arizona tell you that Trump is going to win with a healthy margin. Yeah.
I could see a healthy like Trump +5. Like I
Trump plus
really
five.
do. I
Hmm.
think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah.
Um,
I
all
just think that
right.
it's slipped away. It just has.
Okay. So we have given the first 2 out of 7 swing states to Trump.
Mhm.
I think I could be wrong. I don't know if we gave him both Nevada and Trump in our last episode. Or sorry, I don't think we gave him both Nevada and
And
Arizona in
Arizona.
our last episode.
I think
Um,
we gave him, I think we disagreed on this.
I think we did.
Do you remember exactly?
I
Um,
don't. I think I had higher hopes for Nevada, and I definitely think I had higher hopes for Arizona. Um, Sort of interesting to think about how like a Mark Kelly could have affected that Arizona race.
yeah.
Maybe, who knows? But then
Well,
obviously
so Mark Kelly is such just like he is so boring.
he's the
He
worst. And he
he
was a
cannot
union
excite a
buster, which is
crowd.
like that's not gonna
Yeah, and he didn't
help
have the
you.
support of organized labor. I mean,
No,
not to rehash that
no,
entire
of
debate,
course.
but I do think that was, that would have been a bad choice in the end.
All
I
right, do
think
we
that
take?
I was
Wait,
down on Arizona in our last episode, but higher on Nevada. I'm not sure if I thought that Harris was going to win Nevada, but I definitely, at this point, I feel, I don't know, just my gut is telling me Trump wins Nevada. Like, I don't really know what else to say.
yeah,
And the data is kind of pointing in that direction as well.
yeah. And for the record, I really trust Charlie's gut because he texted me the day before Biden dropped out, being like, "Dude, Biden's gonna drop out tomorrow. Like, it's gonna happen." Like, it was actually the most insane thing. It was actually the most insane poll.
Sometimes you just got to make a call.
Yeah, you actually called game. All right, do we take an easy jet to the Blue Wall, or do we go maybe to Atlanta?
No, the blue
Watch
wall is
Trey
the most
Young.
important. Let's leave the
Okay,
blue wall for last.
okay,
Let's go
cool.
to Atlanta.
Okay, let's go to Georgia. I will start off by saying I have much dimmer thoughts on Georgia than I think a lot of Democrats do. What do you think?
Well, I think I called in our last episode, I said that Kamala was going to win Georgia, primarily off the back of the salience of January 6th and
Yeah.
protecting democracy as a particularly strong issue there. Um, I no longer think she's going to win Georgia. Um, I just, it, uh, I don't really have the polls show that it's an incredibly close race. Um, what did this morning's polling had her up one in Georgia?
Yeah, the New
Uh,
York Times Siena College has them tied dead even. But you've got a lot of other pollsters, Trump +1, Trump +2. Nothing has Trump beyond a +3. All of them are within the margin of victory of margin of uncertainty or whatever the exact word is.
Yeah.
Um, and 538 has him at a 63 to 37 likelihood of taking Georgia. I don't know. I don't like the vibes.
I don't like it either.
I think that Sean Kemp, that's the governor's name. Brian Kemp, Brian Kemp.
Brian
Sorry,
Kemp.
Sean. Um, Brian Kemp, him and Trump sort of repaired their relationship a little bit, and I think
Mhm.
that's pretty huge because he's a pretty dang popular uh, governor, and he
And he
shit
gives
talked.
moderate Republicans
Yeah,
permission to vote for Trump,
exactly,
you
and he
know,
shit talked.
especially
Trump shit
because,
talked him on stage, and that was worrying Republicans a lot. And
yeah,
he said they since made up.
yeah. And, his endorsement, and not just endorsement, but his active joining of Trump on the campaign trail, I think minimizes the January 6th issue a little bit,
Yeah,
considering how relevant, um, election interference and, that entire saga was to Brian Kemp's, what's it called, administration as governor of Georgia. Um, I just kind of, like this isn't exactly like deep thinking about the election or anything. But I just think that if Biden in 2020 only won Georgia by 11,000 votes, it's hard for me to imagine that Harris is going to win it.
yeah, I agree.
I think Biden was uniquely positioned to win Georgia because of his strength among black voters, for one, and also just because Biden just had strengths because it was 2020, it was COVID. Trump became extremely unpopular very, very quickly because of his handling of the pandemic. Um, there was a lot of momentum in Georgia. There was a strong ground game. Um, kind of Stacey Abrams did her thing. It was so close in 2020. Like, I just think it's still a Republican state, I think at the end of the day.
I
It's a
agree.
moderate Republican state, but still a Republican state. And I think that it's just going to kind of come on home for this election.
Yeah, I agree. I just can't. I think it's just for me. It's like when you phrase it in the could could Georgia become more blue, like from 11,000 votes? Like the answer is no. Like I just don't
Yeah.
see that happening. And so it either stays exactly at like there's only the only margin that it could move to is to more to the right. Like I don't see it
Yeah.
ever possibly being more to the left.
No, that's how I feel
Um,
too.
so I think we hand that one to Mr. Trump.
Hmm.
And so I think we go up north a couple states to North Carolina. This is my. I'll let you start off with this one, but I will just say like this is my biggest like. I just don't know what the vibes in North Carolina
Same.
are.
Same. This is the one state where it's just like, I truly don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so let's start with the data and then we'll kind of get into what our guts are telling us.
Okay. Data, Trump wins 62 times out of 38. New York Times, except this is the thing, is the very highly rated New York Times Siena College poll has Harris up +3.
Hmm.
I think this is a big in part to thanks in part to her standing among white voters improving a lot from where
Well,
Biden
college
was.
educated white voters. There's a lot of college educated white voters in North Carolina.
Yeah. But for the most part, like the vast majority of polls have Trump at a +2, a +3, a +1, maybe a +4 here and there. Um, but it's gonna be damn close.
I
What I
think it
think.
might be this election's closest state,
I agree.
actually. Um, Here's one thing that's extremely promising for Harris in North Carolina. Um, the uh, late deciders are breaking for her in the Sunbelt states. We actually didn't mention that for any of the other Sunbelt states, but for me, I just don't see
Yeah.
Georgia, Arizona, or Nevada going to her. But I do see a world where she wins North Carolina. And The polling we got this morning, I mean, we keep talking about this one poll, and it's only one poll, but it's right
But it's a
before.
very big poll that people
It's a
often
yeah,
like
it's a
to.
relatively accurate pollster right before the election. Overall, late deciders are backing Harris 55 to 44%. Um, but there is a regional breakdown there that is very, very relevant. Um, where in the Sun Belt, Harris is winning late deciders 66 to 34%.
Wow.
And in the blue wall, she's losing late deciders 60 to 40%.
Huh.
So I think that in North Carolina, late deciders might push her over the edge because it was looking like a really, really close race before this weekend. And polling from this weekend has been good for her. Polling about late deciders has been good for her in North Carolina. Um, the early voting results in North Carolina have been extremely strong, extremely strong. I think Harris is leading, and I'm trying to find this right now. She's leading by 8. Yeah, so she's winning early voters by 8 in North Carolina, and North Carolina has the highest rate of early voting out of all the swing states. Um,
Okay. So a lot of
already,
people vote by early voting there.
yes, so already more than half of voters polled said that they had already cast their ballot. Um, That's obviously good for Harris because that leaves a smaller um, amount of voters available for, you know, Trump to win on election day because he is going to win voters who vote on election day. And winning by 8 among early voters is a pretty strong number.
I agree.
So
It's quite high. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what you're gonna say.
I kind of okay, so that's the data, but my gut tells me she loses. And I just really don't know which one to trust.
Well, so that's interesting because I think for me, if you look at like holistically the data, it gives Trump an edge, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but actually, there's just something, I don't know, there's something speaking to me about a Harris victory in North
Really?
Carolina.
Oh.
There is. So this is our first big disagreement.
Hmm.
It probably just has to do
Make
with
the
the fact
case,
I
make the case.
genuinely don't know anything about North Carolina. Um, but I think Roy Cooper, a super, obviously pro Kamala, but also just very popular governor. Like I do think that popular governors make a difference. Like I
Mhm.
think like if Kamala wins, I think it's going to be because like Josh Shapiro is the governor of California, or sorry, governor of Pennsylvania. Um, I think that not that I think, Kamala Harris is like Obama or anything. But I think that she might build a similar coalition.
Mhm.
Definitely not as strong with black voters and with Latino voters and and definitely not Muslim voters in Michigan. Uh, but I think she's gonna do really well with college educated voters. And there's just like I think this is just truly vibes, but it's like the
Yeah.
rallies she has there are just so the energy is really like you go to like a Joe Biden rally and it's like the energy is like not there. But I think she has it. There's just honestly, there's really not. I can't make a great case. Like I don't have data. I mean, other than this New York
No,
Times,
sometimes you just gotta trust your gut.
I
I
do
think
feel
that
that way.
I think that for me, I just have a hard time believing that a Democrat is going to win North Carolina at the presidential level. It happened in 2008 with Obama, but that was a landslide victory. He
Did he
won.
not do it in 2012 too?
No,
Okay.
Romney won in 2012. He won 53% of the popular vote that year.
Yeah.
Um, and North Carolina is one of those states, kind of the inverse of Nevada, where it's always really close, but Republicans always win it in the end.
Yeah.
And Nevada, I think it's always really close, and Democrats always win it in the end. This year, I think it's going to be different. Maybe North Carolina is going to be different too, you
Maybe.
know.
I don't know, but do you feel comfortable putting it in the blue column? I mean, this for me is one where it's like we could put it in blue, we could put it in red, and like it doesn't really bother me either way. Um,
I don't feel comfortable putting it in either column,
yeah.
but if like honestly, like I would love to wait until tomorrow night to make a pick on North Carolina. You know
Mm,
what I mean? I'm making
okay.
my like final election predictions to like all my friends. You'll be getting a text
Okay, perfect,
tomorrow
perfect.
night.
Okay, so if you're
But
not if
for
you're
now,
not
I'm gonna go blue. I'm gonna go blue.
this is I was gonna say
Yep.
there's just I don't know. I feel like there's something in the air in North Carolina. I really do. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we're moving on. Do we move on to Blue Wall, or do we get Pennsylvania out of the way right now?
Let's go to Wisconsin.
Let's go to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Oh man.
What are you thinking?
Do you want to start us off here?
Um,
I'm worried about the blue wall. Like that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, uh,
I'm worried about the blue wall. I'm not worried about Wisconsin.
yeah, I
Um,
think yeah.
and the main reason I'm not worried about Wisconsin, there seems to be a uh, January 6th and the whole election interference stuff seems to have a little bit more, and I don't know if this is reflected in the data or not. This is just what I feel as someone who just follows politics way too closely.
Hmm.
It seems to have a little bit of a little bit more of some of staying power in the state of Wisconsin than maybe in some other states. That obviously favors Democrats and really just doesn't favor Trump. It's just like an anti-Trump thing. That's what my gut tells me. And then also, this is what the data says, abortion is has leapfrogged the economy in
Wow.
Wisconsin to become the state's most important issue in 2024.
That's honestly all I need to hear. I mean, if abortion is the most important issue in a state, it's like that's just such a pro. Like, there's no
Yeah.
issue that Democrats have that is more powerful than that.
I think the
Um,
combination of, J6, abortion, and some pretty consistently strong polling
yeah,
um, from Wisconsin is enough for me to say it's going to go blue. I feel
yeah.
pretty confident about that one. I mean, maybe we'll be surprised, but I think it's going to go blue.
No, I think you're right. Just to talk about the data, 538, 57 times out of 100, Harris wins. New York Times Siena College polling, +3 for Harris. She's, YouGov +4. Obviously, there's some polls putting Trump at a +1, but generally she leads most of them. I agree that I think Wisconsin is going to Kamala. Um, which leaves two states left, and these
These
are
are
the
really tough ones.
these are the doozies. These are the doozies. But let's start with Michigan, right?
I hate what I'm seeing out of
Yeah,
Michigan.
yeah.
Like Michigan terrifies me. Nothing is going right in that state.
No, it's
That's
not.
just that is just that's how I'm feeling about that. Like, oh my God.
I'm not sure if it's Israel Palestine. I'm not sure, if it's the economy stupid, if it's Kamala losing, some strength with African American voters, but Michigan just doesn't look great.
It
Just to
just doesn't look
talk,
good.
yeah, just to talk about the data a little bit. 538, once again, Kamala Harris wins 58 times out of 100. However, New York Times Siena College is a dead 45-45.
Also, the fact
Um,
that it's 45-45, no
so
one's
that's,
even close to crossing 50%. Like,
yeah,
things could change in that state in the last 2 days,
that's 10% of voters
just
in the
unaccounted
state.
for
Yeah,
in the most recent high quality poll. That's
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
that's a lot. First off, that's a lot. I think that it must be directly related to the uncommitted movement.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the
Jill Stein is
question,
seeing high levels of support in that state.
Jill Stein, I mean, she's putting, I think she's literally putting everything she can into just winning Michigan.
Yeah.
Just to beat Harris. Does she just like hate Kamala? Like I don't.
I mean, who knows what she's doing? I really like, I mean, like, I don't like the two-party system either, but like, I just don't understand why you would run as a third-party candidate in this
Yeah.
election.
I mean, I think she's trying to stop Kamala from winning, if I had to guess.
Yeah, but I
Um,
don't know why. I mean, well,
yeah,
there's
I
like
don't know.
people talk about like the she's a Russian sleeper agent. Like I have no idea. We're never gonna know that. You know, there's like the picture of her like dining with like Putin's cronies and whatever. But like, who knows? But besides the point, you know, Kamala's support. We've gotten data that shows that among Arab American voters in Michigan, Jill Stein is winning over 40%. That's
Ay,
really bad.
yeah,
Because if you go back to the 2020 election, it was a really close margin of victory for Biden, and he did extremely well in cities like Dearborn, and extremely well among the Arab American population in Michigan. You know who else, what other constituency he did really well in in 2020 was union voters, which is another overrepresented share of the electorate in Michigan and another constituency that Harris is underperforming in. So she's underperforming among Arab American voters. She's underperforming among union voters. She's underperforming all relative to 2020 margins among black voters. And the polls have them tied. I really don't like it. I think, I really don't like it.
yeah. I think it's going. I think it's going red.
I think it's going.
I think we have that. I think if there's one state which is going to go blue that is currently polled at red, which is North Carolina. I think this is the state polled blue that's going to go red. I just
For sure. Yeah.
at the end of the day, like there's 2 days until the election, and vibes
Yeah.
look bad.
The
Like
vibes, just the vibes are bad. Like I just like something feels extremely toxic,
yeah,
like emanating from that state. Now, you know, if it's any comfort, Marist has Harris up three, winning 51% in an October 27th to October
yeah,
30th poll. YouGov also has Harris up three, similar time period. New York Times poll doesn't have her losing, just has them even.
yeah.
But I just hate what I'm seeing out of that
Yeah.
state. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're making these predictions off of vibes.
Yeah,
And
because the polls don't tell you everything. Like you gotta
yeah,
just kind of,
right. Well, the
yeah,
polls are 100% not vibes, and so we're giving it 100% vibes and then
yeah,
mixing them and see how it goes.
yeah, yeah.
I are you comfortable putting Michigan red?
Oh, 100%. I would
Cool.
be extraordinarily uncomfortable putting it blue.
Yeah.
But again, we'll see how I feel tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's gonna actually change between now and tomorrow night, but
I don't know.
uh,
I
maybe
didn't
there'll
think
be like
anything
a
was going to change between Wednesday and today, but a lot did.
maybe a November 4th surprise is coming for us.
Yeah.
Um, So we have one state, one state. This is exactly the exact
All
same thing
right.
happened,
And then we have the tipping point state of Pennsylvania.
and then we have the state that the entire election is dependent upon, Pennsylvania. Just for those who haven't been able to do this math in their head, uh, there are 19 electoral college points left to be given from Pennsylvania. Donald Trump is currently sitting at 267 electoral college points. He's 3 points away, and Kamala is at 252. Um, so this
And
state
you need
decides it,
270 to win.
and you need 270 to win. And so if Kamala wins, she's at 271, and if Trump wins, he is at 286. Um, so what's in the air in Pennsylvania? What are the vibes looking like?
This is like the blue walls, North Carolina. Like I just don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what's going on over there. I really, really don't. Um, you know, Pennsylvania, abortion has proven itself to be a very salient issue in that state. Um, that is very good for Harris. Historically, Pennsylvania is more blue than it is red. It tends to lean in that direction. It's also good for Harris. Um, the polls the entire time until maybe a week ago were better for, they were showing a Harris overperformance in Pennsylvania relative
Yeah.
to other swing states. They are no longer showing that. So I don't know. I mean, I want to say that she's going to win Pennsylvania, but is that just cope? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that just cope?
I All right, let's talk about the data. Cause yeah, I think it might be. I mean, so you are very correct that, in September, on September 18th, 538 had Kamala Harris at a 61 out of 100 likelihood to win. Trump is currently sitting at 53 to her 47. Um, the polls are a little, anywhere between plus Trump 2 to Harris plus 3. YouGov from October 25 to 31, which is pretty darn recent. Harris plus 3. Data for Progress, very famous. Harris plus 2. But then you have Atlas Intel, Trump plus 2. And this is the real doozy, New York Times Siena College at 47-47. Uh,
Which is probably the most. I mean, Data for Progress is a progressive polling outlet. Atlas
yeah,
Intel is a Republican polling outlet. Both of them have it within two, and then the New York Times has it even. Like this state is going to be decided by the thinnest of margins.
yeah. This could even be the thinnest margin state to instead of North Carolina. I mean, it's either
True,
this one or
very
North
true.
Carolina.
Yeah.
I just, I mean, here's the thing. Crosstab polling, Kamala is doing better with the constituents of Pennsylvania than Trump is.
Mhm.
Educated white voters, women. It's not an incredibly, ethnic state in terms of it's a pretty darn white state.
Very white state.
Um, and so that would make it seem like perhaps Kamala might do well.
Hmm.
This is a state for me. I mean, I think part of why it's here's the thing. Part of why, if you ask, okay, here's my actual answer to this question. Like,
Hmm.
if you ask me in a vacuum, like who wins Pennsylvania, like I think I would say it's Kamala. But if you then say, and this is what the position that you and I are in right now, Kamala wins Pennsylvania and then she wins the election, it's like a different question for me. Like it becomes a like, wait, am I coping? Like it's um. So real talk, like my gut actually says Trump.
Same. Because also I've been saying for a couple weeks that I think Trump is going to win the election.
Yeah,
I think that I think that I was like a week ago, I felt very strongly that Trump was going to win the election. Today, I'm back to it being a 50-50. I think the Harris campaign has pulled it together a little bit in the last, week,
yeah,
and she gained a little bit of momentum, peaking at the right time. The Trump campaign has been horrible, absolutely horrible. Um, but I just don't like what I'm feeling in Pennsylvania. And tomorrow, I might be ready to call the election for Kamala. Today, I don't think I've quite moved far enough in that direction.
I feel the
I
exact
think
same way.
that also, union voters are not as important in Pennsylvania as they are in Michigan. Nevertheless, they're a disproportionate share of the electorate. Kamala is underperforming relative to Biden. It was extremely close in 2020. Um, Now she's all obviously overperforming among women and among college educated voters. Um, if white women are going to save us, they will save us via Pennsylvania. you know.
Yeah.
Like they will show up. Um, Pennsylvania at its, I think, the, here's why I might change my mind. Um, when I give my final kind of election predictions tomorrow to you,
Hmm.
I think that Pennsylvania has a Democratic bias. Like I think that like kind of really at its core, if you're like not in like a Trump era, like if you're like, looking at statewide races, it's a Democratic state. Um, but I just don't, I think Trump might just be able to pull this off somehow. You know, I feel very confident that Bob Casey, Democrat running for re-election for the Senate in Pennsylvania, is going to win. I feel very confident about that. It's going to be close, but he's going to win. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm leaning towards Trump at this very moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can convince myself of either. But
Hmm.
and this is sort of like this is backwards, and if we were pollsters, we'd be doing bad practice right now. But I'm not willing to call the election for Harris, actually. I just
Yeah.
don't think if I'm going into this election tomorrow or 2 days from now and I get to choose to be one candidate, I think I might choose to be Trump right now. Um,
Yeah.
and I agree that like I think this is Trump's like Obama, North Carolina. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think like this is the state that he's got a really good shot at just like kind of surprising people with.
I'm looking at the crosstabs right now. I'm not seeing, yeah, I don't know. There's nothing super surprising. I just think that, it's going to be like one candidate gets 49.8%, the other gets 49.7%.
Yeah.
And I just think that Trump is going to eke it out. And I feel like what you're saying, I feel more comfortable right now calling the election for him than I do calling the election for Harris.
Hmm.
Um, and if Pennsylvania is going to be the tipping point state, then he might just have to win Pennsylvania, you know?
Yeah, that's I think where I'm at. And so it's a good thing we did this episode again because we were
Yeah,
correct that things would change. And
yeah.
whereas last episode, I think I might be getting the number wrong here, but I think we had Kamala with a 2-point win. Um, because
I think that if I remember correctly, I had her losing Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina.
but we gave her Michigan.
We gave her Michigan. I gave her Georgia.
Yes, yes, you
Did we
gave her
give her the entire
Georgia.
blue wall?
We did.
We
I
did?
think last time we gave her Georgia, but we didn't give her North Carolina.
Yeah.
But I'm clearly missing something because that has. Oh, and we gave her. Oh, and dude, we gave her Nevada. I
Oh, we
think.
gave her Nevada. Oh, we
Yeah.
gave her a pretty comfortable victory.
273 to 265.
Wait, what did we not give her?
We didn't give her North Carolina, which we did give her this time.
What about Wisconsin and
Miss Wisconsin, Michigan, both going Trump.
Pennsylvania? Oh,
Pennsylvania.
Wisconsin
Oh,
and Michigan both going to Trump
that's what
last
it
time?
was. No, no, no. Sorry, other way around. Pennsylvania. Sorry, I had Pennsylvania wrong. I actually think we did give her a comfortable victory. You're right.
Okay, okay.
Um, so that is not the case anymore, and we'll just have
Yeah.
to see.
Look,
We're
well,
here.
late deciders are moving towards Kamala, but
Yeah,
late deciders in the blue wall are moving towards Trump. That's the other part of this.
yeah.
Um, and you really hate to see that. That's like really bad. That's really bad.
It's
Um,
really bad, and it's really bad in a state like Michigan, which has 10% late deciders.
yeah, yeah, like it's really bad. Um, so I I don't know. I'm feeling bad about the blue wall, and victory really runs through that because Nevada, Arizona is gone. Georgia feels a little out of reach for whatever reason, even though like the numbers aren't that bad.
To me, it's
And
like the
Nevada
ground
just
game.
the
The
vibe
ground
isn't
game
there.
just seems bad in Georgia right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about the ground game in Georgia to comment, but I don't like what I'm seeing. I just don't.
Yeah, I guess I'm by the
Um,
ground game. I don't know the specifics. I just mean like the energy. Like I remember in 2020,
yeah.
like it was like like there was like a movement of like, hey, wait, Democrats might win Georgia, you know?
Yeah, the hype was crazy.
The hype was crazy and it was real and people were feeling it. And I'm
Yeah.
not getting that same energy from Georgia right now.
Okay, well, I need to be. I mean, I care deeply about this election, but when I'm being an impartial observer, I need to be impartial. So, gotta call this one for DJT.
Yeah.
Um, Now I hope that when I deliver final predictions, I kind of want to do I kind of want to do state by state with margin of victory for all 50.
Wow.
Is that biting off more than I can chew?
No, I
I have
think that's
homework,
great.
I have homework to do tomorrow. Like that's kind of a waste of time, but I don't know. I might
But
end
but
up
it's
doing
kind
it
of
tomorrow.
fun.
It'd be kind of fun. Um, but hopefully I look at the news cycle tomorrow and look at maybe some late polls. Washington Post is probably going to come out with something tomorrow morning. Um, and hopefully it looks like, things are just breaking her way in the last couple days. Things change a lot in the last week of a campaign every single day.
Yeah,
But
and we
for
are in
now,
the
as of
most, yeah.
Sunday, November 3rd, it's looking like it's going to be Trump.
Yeah, but we could change our mind tomorrow. And in fact, if you're willing, I'd love to when you send me your predictions, I'll make like a quick little TikTok about what Charlie says
Oh,
the predictions are.
yeah. That'd be awesome. Yeah, yeah. If they're any different, if they're any different.
If they,
Yeah.
we'll see. I think if they're going to be different, it's going to be Pennsylvania.
It's going to be Pennsylvania. I feel pretty confident about the rest of these picks, to be
Yeah,
honest. Yeah.
I do as well. All right. Well, there it is. Thank you so much for hopping on
Oh,
part
always.
two.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do like a post-election episode if we've got that in us. I think it might depend a lot on the outcome. Let's be real. We're not impartial. Um,
Not gonna be able to be Tuesday night, because I'm gonna be super drunk.
oh my God.
Uh,
Yeah.
like, like Z chance that I'm remotely sober when
Yeah.
I'm watching the
I'm
returns.
planning on going to Techno Tuesday on election night, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Just,
I actually don't
like, don't worry
don't
about
think
it.
I can I don't think I can do it without it. I don't think this election is happening any other way for me.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, and this was a great episode.
course. Yeah, great episode. Thanks so much for having me.